for audio.
Okay, now we have audio.
All right. Shabbat shalom. Glad you got. Thank you for hanging in there with us.
We got pictures and words.
Yeah, we are in business. Oops, I better close my words off.
Thank
you for hanging in there with us. There we go. Let's see if that'll. Okay, forget about that. Yeah, so we have a few more logistics. We have the blessing of the Temple Sinai, which is about 10 minutes away by the time you, especially if you hit a stoplight. And then there's the matter of getting the equipment from Temple Sinai, bringing it back over here. And then Dave has to work his magic. Actually, this is all Dave's magic. And get everything set up.
Fixing to blow it all up and start over.
So it makes it a little bit more fun on Shabbat. And Dave is a good sport. He gets us all rocking and rolling.
I like it. I like it to be simple too. Push a button and let it go.
I know, yeah. And
Which is why YouTube's working.
Right. It's weird because Facebook is not interfacing with anything today.
I really do think it has something to do with the time change. We absolutely did nothing different. But the time changed.
The time change.
I think it could have some.
Thank you, Ben. Right?
Anyway.
Good old Ben Franklin.
and short of just getting the tech guru over here to do it all and get it all figured out.
Right, that next generation with a little more expertise than what we have.
Yeah.
So.
In the future, you'll be able to think go live, and it just goes live.
Okay, that's too much for not there yet. All right, so Shabbat Shalom. We were going to talk about the teaching today, Genesis 18. We have a lot of interesting concepts. Of course, I only focused on a few of them, and let's see. Do we have a link? Someone's asking me for the link on Facebook. So I'm going to go see if I can find it.
I just clicked off mine, so basically I can put a link on there.
It was on United Israel or United Israel World Union?
United Israel World Union. Basically, let me do that. I'll just put a link over on Facebook while y'all go ahead and keep talking.
Okay. So I only touched on a few of the points that could have been made because there's really a lot there. And what I see throughout human history is you have a way of life that works, a way of life that leads to prosperity for everyone across the board. But then you have people who don't like obeying the rules. They don't like obeying, oh, that's not you. They don't like living by God's way of life. Oh, yeah, you better put that hand down. They don't like putting aside their lusts, getting with the plan and following the rules and laws of the land. So they seek to manipulate that law, because any law, no matter how good it is, if it is going to allow its society to have liberty and freedom, it's going to have loopholes. I mean, if you get rid of every single loophole, it's going to lead to a lot of oppression. So people learn how to manipulate those laws so that they gain greater power, they gain greater wealth, there's less accountability for them, and these are usually the leaders of the people, the elite among society, who then don't have to obey the law because they write laws that supersede it, or they denigrate, they just trash the laws that used to hold them accountable. And as time progresses, you find this disparity then between the ruling elite class and all other classes. And one thing that you find is universal to this elite ruling class that develops in every single society. I mean, it began first kind of with is where we see it, right when Abraham comes out. You see it again in ancient Israel. Then you see it, sometimes you see it in Judaism, much lesser degree in Judaism, but you certainly see it in Christianity. And that is this tendency, this desire for, especially an elite ruling class, but once the lie gets told, everybody embraces it, that you can't. That is the overwhelming message that holds all of these together and wants to take you away from the law is you can't obey it. You can't do it. You can't be righteous.
Why even try?
Thank you. Why even try? That's right.
And I think and now
Well, that was always
just so y'all know,
confusing. Yeah.
we got YouTube running. I put a link on Facebook going back to YouTube.
Okay.
I'm going to ignore this tech stuff
Okay.
and try to have a conversation.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, we'll follow the chat
So I
between Sherry
interrupted
and I.
what were
You're
you
good.
saying?
So it's fascinating because every single way of life that brings you into oppression, that brings you under a heavy yoke of bondage, takes you away from the liberty and those boundaries that protect your freedom. So by telling you you're not good enough, you can never merit, or you just have a sin nature that you can never overcome, or that's who does that? You know, that idea. That's passe. That's not relevant. We've progressed beyond that, you know?
It comes into the idea of you're either lifting somebody or something up or you're tearing it down.
Right.
One of the two. There's no middle road there, so to speak.
Kind of you're either for me or you're against me.
Exactly. Or you can choose to do good or choose not to do good or choose bad. Or I don't know how that
Right.
works. You know, you can choose not to do good. Maybe my use of the word good is not proper there. You can choose life or you can choose death. Is
Right.
the way the Torah looks at it.
Exactly. Blessings and curses.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I saw is this ability that even in the heinousness, the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was possible that there were righteous people. And then when there were no righteous people, what did God do? God tried to save Lot and his family. And he did save all that would go. And what was that, a total of like 3-4 people?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So, you know, God was
Yeah,
very,
that's
very
interesting.
merciful.
Somebody made a comment this past week about the sin of Sodom, you know, Lot. And it wasn't even someone that's on the UIW list. It was just on Facebook. One of my random friends said, the thing about Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's wife, looking back, it's like they were looking back on their past and getting, you know, caught in that. And I thought, well, that's not exactly right.
Lot's
But
wife looking back.
Yeah.
Don't even look back.
yeah,
The
don't
idea.
look back.
Well, there's been a lot of misuse
Go
of that.
forward.
Right.
Well, there's been a lot of misuse
Yeah.
of that too. I've witnessed it firsthand. Brother, you can't look back.
Right.
Well, man, look.
But then
Sometimes, history.
yeah, you got to hold on to that history. Because then on the other side of that, the antithesis of that is Isaiah, who says, look to your father Abraham, look to Sarah. I called him alone and established. So I think it all depends on what we're looking back
It's in
to.
the context.
Yes.
It all comes
Exactly,
down
it
to
is the context.
you know.
Are we looking back to the righteous paths, the things that made us strong, or are we looking back, to those flesh pots of Egypt and everything? Yeah, you can have a mighty good, like for instance, a good example, America today. We're all living high on the hog. We're enjoying, the economy's booming. We're doing great. But it's at the expense of a huge, unsustainable national debt.
Yeah.
And so we're robbing from our children and our grandchildren so that, we can enjoy, we can, we have it. So, again, it comes back, exactly, Betty, she says, looking back to the cucumbers and leeks in Egypt. That's exactly right. And so, it's cyclical.
So we have one story that's physically looking back. The other one, as Betty brings out, a mind to go back to where other things were, changed. I kind of like the way it.
Remembering the
it is.
good stuff, but forgetting.
or in general complaining. I'm just going to go ahead and say
yeah.
it's complaining.
You're right. It is complaining because it's fascinating the parallel between Sodom and Gomorrah and Egypt. In both cases, God says, "I have heard the cry." For Sodom and Gomorrah, it's the cry of the people living in Sodom and Gomorrah. for Israel and Egypt, it's the cry of my people. But in both cases, he hears the cry of these people.
Just like, and I'm going to interject the Cain and Abel story. It's like he heard
His blood.
blood crying out from the ground. You know,
Exactly. So either way, God hears and he responds. But at the same time, you have this idea of people, they cry out for the wickedness. They cry out for the oppression. But are they willing to follow the path that takes them out of it?
Yeah.
They want to sit there, they want to wallow, they want to complain, oh, I'm persecuted, oh, this, oh, that. And here God says, this is my way, walk in it. Oh, that you had walked in my ways. You would have been so prosperous.
so I'm going to throw in some of my personal stuff on this. Was talking with friends, even relatives sometimes, it's like, well, what is this path and how do we go about it? It's confusing. You got 16,000 rules to keep up with and do this and don't do that. What's really right, what's really wrong? Well, I am one that presumes I know the truth. I hope I do anyway. And so, but it's hard to convince other people of the path they should take.
Right.
In other words, there's always questions about, well, what about conversion and what about this and what about that? Oh, it gets messy in my head. It's like almost to the point where I get confused.
Right, right. Well, and it can.
I start doubting myself or thinking, double.
And I think that comes in when we start listening to arguments that are not based on the text. When coming back to the text holds you strong and holds everybody accountable.
And what always really I have to get back to, as far as my mind, is what pure religion is, or what the pure faith is. See,
Wow.
I'm saying that there's been a lot of religious problems. It's a mess. It seems to be a mess, and I'm not dogging anyone or anybody, but it's just it seems to be confusing sometimes,
Right.
hard to explain. Therefore, there's a lot of people that are turned off by that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so, if it was pure and it was easy, easy is not the right word.
Right.
If it was clear.
Clear.
Clear
That's a
and
better
simple.
word.
So, and this is why, I bring this up all the time, but if you're not subscribed to Prager University, subscribe. I have not come across any other teacher that makes it as clear, as concise, of taking Torah principles and values and showing how they benefit and better society. It's just, for me, even on things, you go along, and I don't know about you guys, there's this like knee-jerk reaction of, ooh, this isn't good for us. Ooh, why would I ever want to do this? And but then the more you study it and you see it in a broader context of consequences, as you brought up,
Yes.
Sherry, it's like, oh, this does make sense. Oh, this is good for us. It may not seem that way at the beginning, but that's just because we don't understand the systems that are at play.
I thought it was interesting when you brought up the point of, like, all civilizations would have like a moral code, but it was different from the Torah in that it only involved their culture, their civilization. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and explain it.
It's interesting because every city had its own deity, its own protective deity, its own cult with its own priest. And each of these had different laws for constituents. So you might have Ibn Ishtar, you might have Hammurabi. You had all these different law codes. And some things overlapped, like you might have had, and I don't recall them all. I didn't look at them before I came in here, but I have looked at them in the past. Some of them contradict, some of them overlap. And then, of course, you'd have the overlap with Torah. Some of the things in the Hammurabi Code, he deals with theft. He deals with theft against the state versus theft, what happens if you can't repay. And they must have had, just think of this, early in mankind, you're doing surgery. And there must have been like a 90, I mean, I'm just guessing here, a 90% fatality rate with surgery, because he says if a patient loses a surgeon, I think the penalty is your hand is cut off. That's pretty drastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
But that must tell you that it was a
Yeah.
huge problem going on. Or,
Talk about
I mean,
not wanting to be a surgeon then, you know, or a studier of
or
anatomy
even,
and so forth.
yeah, or even
The
an
learning of the
engineer.
humans.
Yeah, so one of the other things in the Hammurabi Code, and I think those of us around New Orleans can relate to this, if you build a building and it collapses and kills people
Right.
because you cut
I laugh because I
corners,
follow that.
yeah,
I've
you
been
cut
following that.
corners and you steal some of the things for maybe another project that should be going into this project, and you're trying to skim off the top to make
Yeah.
a fast buck, and it costs other people's lives. Well, in the Hammurabi
Right.
Code, your life went
Yeah.
for life.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but you find in the Torah, there's a God doesn't embrace everything. He addresses all of those issues, but there's a lot more leniency, a lot more mercy. You know, where Hammurabi might have you pay 10 to 20 times the amount, in Scripture, it's 5 to 6 times the amount. So it's a lot more, it's more about restitution to the person that was harmed and preventing, you know, cyclical crimes versus, you know, just wanting to punish someone and kill
Yeah,
them.
it's tough. I mean, it all comes down to consciousness. You know, if you have a guilty conscience or conscious, to just say you were in, you know, you were a millionaire or whatever, and you were developing buildings, because we're going to use that subject, you know, and you cut corners and somebody gets hurt or killed, yeah, you should be held strictly liable for that.
Right.
Now you got to come in and try to figure all that out. But the simple post I'm making about this is basically a matter of conscience. If a person has a conscience, and they develop that conscience, and they use that conscience, I guess, is a way of looking at it, it would prevent a lot of, you know, harm in this world. 'Cause,
It really
you know,
would.
And Jodelle
hate-
talked about that. The conscience to me is the circumcised heart. It has to do with
It is.
a heart devoted to the covenant, to obeying.
How do we get back there? How?
I know we're in this society we live in, we're desensitized at every corner. That's why last week when I was talking about the things that will distract us or keep us from fulfilling God's plan for our life, those are things that I want to examine and see, where have I been allowing this ungodly influence to come in to desensitize my heart,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Well, and the other thing that I see, I don't know about you, is how the role of motherhood and even fatherhood is so put down, so frowned upon society. When if you have mothers who have the time, I mean, because mothers are slaves today. They work 8-hour days, sometimes more. They do laundry, they cook, they do homework with the kids, they listen, they tuck in bed, they take care of the husband. Where do you have time to instill Torah values, to instill that love of righteousness and the hatred of wickedness? I mean, wickedness should be hated.
Yeah.
You know, where do you instill and teach that sensitivity if you don't have time?
And it begins in the home.
It-
I mean, it really does begin in the home.
Begins in childhood. You want to catch some of these comments?
Yeah,
So the point that you talk about the male and the female and the mother in the home, and I'm generalizing here, it's got a lot of stuff to do. It's overwhelming.
Right.
You know, and then where do you have time to teach and learn Torah? Well, and then I'm trying to throw in what Sherry said about the heart. It's the heart.
Right.
Y'all both agree on that. It's a matter of the heart. So I'm saying, and I might get blasted for this. I don't know. I don't usually get blasted too hard. But if our actions are Torah based, then we really shouldn't have to worry so much about the teaching and so forth. Now, I could
You
go
can
wrong there,
teach,
but
mean
your
teaching by
your
example?
life is a teaching.
You're teaching by
Right.
example.
Yeah, but you're not really doing it for that purpose.
No.
Your example is your teaching,
Right.
and so.
Yeah,
You know,
and
so I'm trying to relieve some of that, but
Yeah.
that's not going to do it all. And I'm trying to relate that into the big picture of the future, what the Torah says the
Right,
future's
you'll know.
going to be, and I see it as a more simple lifestyle.
Just Noah and touches on this. Let me bring this up. He says it begins in the home, but people don't have time. You say, okay,
That's a
okay.
true
So
statement.
Jodelle, you and I both have 6 children.
It's overwhelming.
I made a decision when Dave and I had my last 3 children that it was more important for me to stay home with the children,
Right.
and it was a financial burden. It was
Right.
no income from my side until I started doing, substitute teaching, that sort of thing. But I don't regret that. I mean, we lived in poverty, but
Right.
our children are so different because of that.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it might mean a sacrifice, but there is this pressure on young people today to have this big house. I mean, just staying in those little cottages we stayed in Sukkot. Look at the
You mean the ones
difference
that
in
turn
the
around in?
yeah, but
You were
that was the
close.
norm in the
Right.
1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
Homes and everything was so much smaller,
You were-
but
you
now
had
we
closer
live in this.
interaction.
Choices have to be made.
That's so true.
Choices have to be made.
Well, that's so true. And, it saddens me to see all the pressure on young people today where
Right.
having a family, there's too many people in the world and they're discouraged from having children.
Oh, I caught so much flack.
Me
From
too.
one of I thought was my closest friend. We were at a friend's wedding and standing around the reception, and she just blasted me in front of these people about, well, I think you shouldn't have children if you can't provide for them when everything they need. It's like,
Well, and
you're a good Catholic girl. Why are you saying that? Don't you believe what you believe? You say you believe.
well, so much of this don't have too many children because you can't take care of them. All it really does is when you give, children such individualized attention, it creates them a very selfish, me-focused, society where when they grow up with siblings, they interact and they learn to be part of that family. They learn that, life doesn't revolve around me. I've got to, fit in. And again, it's like righteousness. I've got to do my part at being righteous
Yes.
because it affects the rest of my family.
And think about this, Jodelle. How many times have you heard this argument from young people, especially I'm seeing more and more make a decision, I'm not going to have children because this world is so wicked. Why would I bring them into it? But if you were following Torah, yes, you want to bring children into the
Absolutely.
world because they can be a light in the darkness. It's like,
That's right.
come on, where's your
Well,
where's your
it's-
foundation there?
exactly.
If you can, 'cause
No.
y'all are speaking pretty broadly.
I know. Children are going to grow up. They're going to have their own minds and make their own decisions. But the hope is that a child
It's what
has a
we choose to do.
potential.
It's what we choose to do. You guys chose to have children
Yeah.
and raise them, and there's a lot of sacrifice. You don't have a lot of free time.
No,
You
there
know what I'm
isn't. Not
saying?
for a number of years.
Yeah.
Well, and but that's the foundation. What is the first blessing that God gives to Abraham after he promises him land? This very next breath,
children.
multitude of children. So
And
when
that
you
and that was one of the reasons he was chosen too, because God knew he was going to.
he was going to
teach his
do it,
children.
justice and judgment. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's it.
Well, and so much I think of what we miss when you look at economics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The economics of a society is directly tied to the number of children that they have. When you have a burgeon of children and there's a population growth, there's growing pains initially, but then your economy expands. Everything expands. It
Yeah.
becomes more prosperity. But
If we get all our ducks in a row on that, because I mean, person can choose to have a lot of children, but there's a responsibility that comes with
Yeah.
that.
There is, definitely.
And unfortunately, that's not always met. So, you know, I would assume that everybody tries the best they can, but obviously not, you know.
Right.
But I mean, my point is, there's a responsibility to our choices. We do have
Absolutely.
free choices, but there are responsibilities, so if you choose to do that, that's, you know, having children. Since we're going to talk on that subject a little bit, that's a choice that we've made, and it's got a responsibility to it. But it takes a lot of our time. We don't no longer have
It does. But
our
then,
own time.
but
Our
you-
own- we just very-
but then there's that investment
there's that
payoff.
investment, and later on, I'll assure you, that time comes. You know, so
Exactly.
we're a little bit more older, and we doing the
And I'm
empty
so
nest thing right now,
thankful
you know.
for my children
Oh, I
right
know.
now. They're
Me too.
awesome.
My animals have taken on a whole new meaning in life.
Yep, yep, they do.
Why
Your
did my
next
son-
bag is the
Why did my
children.
son call me as much as I want him to? You know.
Right, exactly. All right, I'm going to catch some of these comments.
All right.
So
Yeah,
going back,
Yeah.
going back when we were talking about, you know, how people want to complain and they look to the past, the goodness of the wickedness of the past, or the oppression of the past as being something that's good. Marlene says, it reminds me of Hezekiah. It
Yes.
always sounded to me when the punishment was declared to him, he seemed perfectly fine with what it was, so long as the punishment would be coming after he died. And yeah, that's so
selfish.
true. He says, "Oh, this is fine, just as long as there's peace in my days," which is so true. You know, but I will say along that line though, Hezekiah did do what he could. I mean, I think he did as much as he could during his day for trying to reform the people, for trying to bring them back to Torah. It says, you know, no other king kept the law as much as what Hezekiah did until you go back to David. So Hezekiah did everything that he could, but how can you turn the heart of a people? You're a king. You can't, you know, you can work whatever you can do to change the hearts of the people. But sometimes they have to go through those curses of the law until they get so tired of those vanities under the sun, so tired of hitting their head on that same brick wall, that they're going to say, let's stop and pause a minute. Let's try something different this time around. Let's
Or if they
maybe
come to
try-
themselves like
Yeah,
the prodigal.
exactly,
It's like,
exactly.
wait a minute.
Yeah,
I
or
don't have
like
to-
even
Yeah.
the your teaching last week.
Yeah.
You know, the coming to yourself,
Oh.
where you return, and is not Torah the embodiment of what and who we really are?
Mm-hmm.
You know, isn't that the joy of our life? You know, everything is right there.
And Betty's talking about, you know, I'm taking it out of context because I haven't been reading, following the subject here. Be a good church. We care for one another here, and we care for you. I don't even know what she's talking about there, but I know Betty's heart. You know, and that's one thing about fellowship is that we not only do we have a tendency as humans to want to be encouraged by our other fellow humans and given a thumbs up. You know, sometimes we feel like we're alone, and we make it, and that could be a good thing because
I think Betty was responding to
I
just
Okay.
Noah
but
because
my
a
point-
few things happened there, and she's
Okay.
talking about.
Well, keep going with that point because I think you're making a really good point.
Well, unfortunately, my
I'm
brain's
sorry.
not.
I'm sorry.
Not
Well,
if I interrupt,
it
you
tends
can't
to
remember.
ramble, then you know.
no,
but
you're
it-
good. Well, I think
you remind me of-
you're bringing up the point that it's good that we walk in a righteous way. But I think it comes back around to the point also of when we are lonely, when we feel like we're alone on this path.
Right.
This is where I find the idea that, oh, you know, whether I become part of a group of people, that this Torah lifestyle, that this Torah truth is just for me.
That's right.
When you don't share it, your group doesn't grow. I mean, shouldn't if you find something Maybe if you find a cure for cancer, if you find a happy pill that, forget the Xanax. I mean, this is just natural. We're all going to be
And
happy.
we have to work at some of those things. I mean,
Yeah.
I really hadn't done my job properly about learning how to communicate real well as far as vocabulary goes. I really should work on that because I have these awesome thoughts and they just don't. I can't share them.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough.
I know.
Can't
I
share
know.
'em, it's like
It's right there on the tip of your
what's wrong
tongue.
with my tongue, And so, that was a very good point. So it's being able to fellowship and share and talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and what I find, the more people see righteousness,
Yep.
the more that they see a people that are living righteously, I think the more people will be inspired to say, I can.
If they are seeking God, because
It's-
if somebody is like, their heart is hardened,
That's
they're
right.
going to be offended by
They
seeing
are.
you walk Torah, and they're going to think, oh, they're weirdos.
And by the law.
They're not, they're just some weird thing. So yeah, it depends on people's
does.
hearts.
It really does.
The
It
Torah
really
teaches us
does.
that God's in control of people's hearts. He can
Is he?
turn them and
Well,
he
the
can change
king.
them.
The king's heart
Well,
is
the
in the
king's
hand
heart,
of
but,
Jehovah.
That's
right.
I like to, bring that down a notch. Maybe the old, what do you call them? The peon?
Yeah, the peasants, the
Yep.
peasants,
Maybe
the
he's in charge
serfs.
of the peon's hearts. Also, I'm sorry, I just gotta say that.
Well, the consequences,
Right.
definitely.
It is.
Jehovah allows those consequences for our
But we never
actions.
know where somebody's heart's at. We really
No,
don't.
we
No,
don't,
no,
and we
we
don't
don't.
know
can
when
get
they might
clues
Well,
here
and
there,
it's-
get to
but
that point
we
where
never
they.
know what God's
Right.
doing in their life.
Absolutely. But because we don't know, the last thing we should do is discourage anyone from observing Torah, keeping the Shabbat, or
Okay.
any aspect of Torah.
It's a tough responsibility.
We should encourage it.
I mean, could you imagine somebody that doesn't really want to, but are just inquisitive? They want to know a little bit, or maybe they're just fishing for you, to find out where you're at. But could you imagine somebody coming to me and asking me, "Well, teach me how Torah is," and I'm going, "Oh my gosh." To me, it's like, I don't know,
Right.
So what I'm trying to contrast here is a studied scholar type, pretty much can study this stuff out, have good answers and stuff. And then there's somebody like me that just wrote off the streets, basically. Can't really give all the correct answers all the time, or half the time, rather.
But somebody's
you
asking
know.
you. So that means they see
Well,
something
that's it,
in your
yeah.
walk and they want to know. So,
Well, and you have a lot more knowledge than what you give yourself credit for, because you're able to see crap, for lack of better terms. Well,
It is
you're
some
able to,
strange stuff.
you're able to identify it, and you have a heart for truth, and you're there.
But what I'm actually saying, though, is that I haven't put in the time to study and come up with the correct, polished answers all the time. And it's a problem. It really is a problem. Not trying to lift myself up or bring myself down or anything like that. I'm just trying to be real here and say, and I'm trying to tie this into choice. I really made that choice. I made that choice.
Yeah.
I said, I need to stop. I can go somewhere and study and maybe come out better on this.
I bet you
Or
could.
not. Now, I'm not knocking anybody that did
Right.
or does. 'Cause
Yeah.
I got lots of
Well, thank you. I
friends
appreciate
do.
that.
I'm just saying,
But I found-
it takes both. is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
okay.
Exactly, it
Can I say
does.
something here? Because I'm like you, I don't study Torah as much as I should. I ordered the book that Vicky recommended, though, the Bedside Torah, because I do intend to do it more. When I was put in a position last week to teach, I did spend more time searching
Right.
out. And guess what happened as a result? Our client was talking to her, and something came up, and I said, oh yeah, fulfillment of purpose. That's what I'm teaching on this week. And all of a sudden the Torah's coming out and I'm telling her and she's getting inspired. And,
Exactly.
my preacher used to teach from the Old Testament. I missed that. It's like,
Oh.
see, but I didn't have any
That's amazing.
set answer or anything. But when you put the tools in the tool bag, Dave, guess what?
Exactly. Well, so another one. So, a friend of mine, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this, Anna, as you guys know, she had similar situations this past week where she was put in different positions to share Torah, both her and her husband. And, they felt such a blessing when they did, but then it's like kind of, when they held back, they felt they didn't have that blessing. When they kind of held back and they didn't fully share because, you're afraid of whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like when we share that knowledge of righteousness, when we enable and empower with others with the yes, you can,
Yes.
it makes us stronger as a nation and a society. Because if it's just you and me
Well,
holding this banner of righteousness, you have the
Yeah.
steamroller of people who want power, who will do anything
Yes.
to get it. They're going to
And
steamroll
Jodelle,
you.
that was the thing that hurt me so deeply in Christianity was that hierarchy of power and oppressing the people underneath and trying to force you to follow the denominational code of whatever you're supposed to
Exactly.
do. But and I know you've put years and years into study and you have an awesome memory and you and Ross are like up there, but I'm like
doesn't
Sandy.
come
Is
free.
it Sandy Stevens? Yes. Sandy Stevens has a comment here. It's like, Jodelle, I would love that one should share and teach others. I would love to do that, but how do I become a competent Torah teacher to the nations?
Oh, I love that question.
And it's
Yeah.
like, if I can do it, Sandy, you can do it.
That's
'Cause
right.
I'm
Well,
not.
and so
I'm not
that's-
a teacher.
Well, so I have found, from my own experience, and I
Yeah.
think you just said that you found it too, that, and this goes not just for teaching Torah, it's for teaching anything.
Okay.
There's 3 cycles. One, you study the material,
Yeah,
and
know
you
your
learn it,
material.
and stick with a small subject.
Yeah.
You study, you learn it, write it down, and then to really know it, you teach it to somebody else. When you do that with math, it's like I can't tell you how many times I taught math to my kids, and I was like going, "Oh, really?
Right.
That's how it works,"
I didn't- yeah, I learned more from teaching my children than I did when I was in school.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So begin with the subject. Begin with a small,
Yes.
this particular subject, or maybe a particular word study. Create. I don't like notes. I have notes that go back 20 years. I mean, I have stacks and stacks of notebooks. I never relook at them. I don't have time.
I know Dave asked me why. What do I do? What are you doing with all those notes?
Yeah.
I take notes. That's how I learn. Though
okay.
I will write down, and I can remember it better.
But you're not studying.
I am, but
yeah,
I can go
'cause-
back. But,
yeah, see,
but I'm
you're growing on that. You're learning. You are studying. You're doing a lot more than what you give yourself credit for.
So it's so like I'm gonna enlighten you on how I study. It's with a zero-turn lawnmower riding or driving my car and thinking.
But see-
Oh, but now you have no excuse because you have those Bluetooth headset that while you're doing your mowing, you could have some some podcasts going on or something.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, it's a discipline. Studying is a discipline. You got to know your subject. You just mentioned that, and so the subject is how do you become a Torah teacher, so to speak, and
Sam, I especially love UIW because they don't solicit seed money. Remember that? Remember that
Yeah.
ministry? It was like, just send in your
Well,
seed
so-
money and it'll come back tenfold.
Yeah. So it's the whole. It was Amos's statement. Basically, you're going to meet God. I mean, if that isn't the antithesis of, sow your seed, it's like, behold, you're going to meet your maker. It's like, but you don't hear that today. Everything today is just, if it isn't if it isn't uplifting, if it doesn't make me feel better about myself where I am without doing anything,
Yeah.
that's all people want. They just want, they give me the drug. Give me the drug
feel good.
to make
The
me feel good.
placebo.
Uh-huh. And, I'll come back again next week for another hit. Where you find the exact opposite in Torah. I mean, the prophets are smacking Israel down. They're saying, get with the program.
Yeah.
What you're doing,
Yeah.
is not working.
That's-
Now, another comment that was made was how Abraham was able to, and this wasn't here, this was to me privately,
Okay.
how Abraham was able to reason with Jehovah. Was that disrespectful?
How was that? How was they?
Able to
Obviously.
reason, he reasoned and he argued with Jehovah. Or he, whether it was Jehovah himself, his
How was he
messenger.
able to do that? So to speak.
Well, he
I missed
says,
the question. I'm sorry. I was reading.
right. Well, he says, if there be, and then he says, okay, and he says, well, don't be angry with me, but if there is, and he keeps lowering and lowering, kind of testing God, how low will you go? How few is too few for you to take notice of the righteous?
You consider me righteous? I'll stay here and I'll be one. Or, where do we end this? That was 10. 10 was the number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the number that he felt would justify, saving all the wickedness within the city.
Talking about making a good deal, so to speak.
Exactly.
Remind of Moses did the same thing.
Right.
And it's like, God wanted to destroy the whole thing. Pretty much.
Well, what came across to
Discussions
me
Otherwise, yeah.
is that Abraham steps in and plays the role of a defense attorney. And he says, he's not,
Yeah.
he does not argue that, he never takes the position that Sodom and Gomorrah have not
That's right.
sinned and that they are not wicked.
He kept it personal. He kept it out of
Yeah, and he acknowledges that. Yeah, that's. I mean, he already knows. They've already been captured. They've already been deported. He had to send out an army to go get them. He brought them back in the days of Melchizedek. So now, the question is, okay, they're wicked. I know they're wicked. I know they're departing from your ways. But what about your mercy? What about mercy for the righteous who are among them? So what Abraham is appealing to and pleading for is Jehovah's mercy within his judgment. So to me, that's a very interesting interplay. And you find when God says that Abraham is his prophet, you find all of Israel's prophets playing that role. They all beg for God's mercy because they know judgment is coming. They see it coming. And, he even says, Ezekiel in his days, he says, there's none that stands in the way. There's none that pleads for my mercy. So, if we're looking for something, I guess, a role that each of us plays, it's, I would say, to return, to seek Jehovah, return to Torah, plead that he remembers the covenants mentioned in Leviticus 26, but also pray for his mercy, that mercy is shown to the next generation, because that's a role that we're given.
It's kind of the subject that I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, and I was having to bite my tongue, so to speak. We were basically speaking about this country, and we've always heard, at least for a while, we've heard, return back to God. If this country turns back to God, it'll be blessed and so forth. And we've taken God out of the schools and so forth. And I was having an issue or problem with that, being that now with the Torah-based idea, how's that work there? But so my point of even mentioning this is that's some of the confusion that I have in trying to have a conversation with people outside of the Torah when they're inquiring about my faith. And, where do I fall here? Because I've got a strong Christian upbringing, and we know that those answers, I preached them for a long, long time, you don't turn a guy, this country's gonna go to hell, so to
Right.
speak. And so,
Well,
we're
I think your upbringing can be a blessing and an asset that provides
sure.
a bridge.
I understand where it's coming from. It's just that I've had to kind of shift gears a little bit, or
Mm-hmm.
a whole lot rather. I guess it would be better to say.
Well, it does, and one of the things that first of all, I found you have to make it something people can relate to.
That's right.
If you're just spouting out, do this, don't,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to turn people
Yeah,
off.
no,
yeah.
you don't want,
So-
you never get into that conversation.
Exactly.
You don't want to get that far.
Exactly. So one of the ways in that I found, which is a love of my heart, is the idea of the U.S. Constitution. I brought up how all these ancient nations were taking the principles given to Noah and they were putting them in their own law codes, trying to apply these principles to their societies. And most of them got it horribly wrong. But you find the United States Constitution does the exact same thing. But having that Israelite heritage and drawing off of what worked in different cultures and what didn't, you find that the United States Constitution is like 94% Torah in the ideals and principles that it embraces. So when it comes to people that I'm talking and you try to instill righteousness, you try to instill love of Torah.
That's kind of the subject matter me and my friend were having a conversation
Yeah.
about. It's like, where's this righteous at? Who gives it? And we were just really going after that.
Well, okay, so there's
Wasn't
another
an
one.
argument,
Can
we were having a good time.
is righteousness given, or is it something that a state that you attain simply by the way that you live your life? So, and my kids who are like games, would be like leveling up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing
Yeah.
of that teaching about walk to yourself, like
Yeah.
level up to that higher
That's
level.
right. That's absolutely right. And so much of it is we do such negative self-talk. We do such negative, the whole I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And we spend so much time holding ourselves back that we haven't even tapped the potential of what we can do when we say I can. We haven't seen it.
There's a comment here, and I want to read it. I don't even know where I'm going with some of the things I'm saying this morning. It's really,
I know. I
really-
think Dave Tyler
Yeah,
said.
you know too.
Dave Tyler said, Dave
think
like
that-
to talk before he thinks, huh?
I love it. I love it. It's raw and it's
I never
real.
would
Like,
say anything
it's
otherwise. Trust me. I thought about what I was going to say. I said, "Nah, I better
It just
say
comes out.
Yeah, just good. So as we learn Torah, as we learn Torah, we learn what to keep from our Christian past and what we keep. And I understand what she's saying there. It's good advice.
Who was it that said this?
Miriam?
Miriam? Yeah.
No, I'm getting down to that one.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I'm just using what she's saying here as a kind of a
I
thing.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Right, but see, that's a problem because with me and the way my little brain doesn't function all the time. So I've had to learn that very statement right there. There's a lot of my upbringing that I've had to reevaluate big time.
Yeah.
It's just that it conflicts with Torah. When you're learning those things.
Well,
Now, here's the problem, and here's what I'm talking about. Years ago, I had to decide, well, is it worth the investment? And I'm really going to get bit on this one. So I'm going to learn Torah. I'm learning what the Torah says and everything. I hope I don't have to unlearn that also and go to something else. I mean, I'm not saying there's
Well-
another religion out there, but I'm just saying,
Right.
as we all know, there's a lot of opinions out there about what
Right.
this means and what that means how
and
this
what's
goes.
been
Exactly.
what's been
You get weary. is
jerked
what I'm
around
saying.
and misinterpreted and mistranslated
Right,
and changed or whatever, and I had to stop worrying about that too, because I had the same thoughts, Dave.
Okay.
I did about
Well, and that
how
was,
far do we want to
yeah,
pick this apart, kind of thought.
Exactly.
But it comes from trust. I can trust Jehovah. When my heart is towards Him, maybe this is what I learned last week reading. It's like Abram wasn't perfect, but as long as he kept walking the path, the right path, he could fall off. He could get, lie or do something wrong. He could get back. He could get back to it.
That's right.
Jehovah was patient and kind and merciful with him, and I trust that he's able to do the same, because he does have this plan for each one of our lives. Torah's the best plan I've found so far.
Oh, it is.
And here's another thing, and I've said this to Ross before. I trust that the same spirit of Jehovah that inspired Moses, inspired the prophets to speak these words, for them to be recorded. If one is not authentic, if it is not from Jehovah, he's able to guide and direct and feed us with the true words rather than the false words. And I that's where my faith is. I throw myself at his mercy, and I say, I've learned a lot of things that I've had to unlearn.
Absolutely.
So you're going to have to lead me and guide me. You're my only hope.
That's right.
You're my Savior. You're my Redeemer. Redeem me. Help me.
That's right. Well, and that's when we come before Jehovah humbly and we take that attitude, he takes us there. I mean, look at
does.
all of us. I mean, our
does.
backgrounds are so different.
Oh, yeah.
Our upbringings, our pasts are so different. But here we are at the same table. Do you know what a miracle that is? I mean, it is absolutely amazing. And everyone, I mean, whether you're watching online, we each have similar stories. We each have similar but vastly contradictorily different. But the thing that holds us is the seeking of Jehovah, this holding on. It's like Jacob when he's wrestling. He catches hold and he won't let go. And it's like you say, I won't let go until you bless me. And it's like, until I have truth, until I feel satisfied, you just hold on for dear life. And I think what is underlying that is the same thing that Abraham said to Jehovah. Will not the judge of the whole earth do right? And logically, I think us as humans can deduce that if there is a God, for the earth to sustain itself, he has to be righteous. So if we take hold of him and we don't let go, if he's a righteous God, he's going to deliver.
Yes.
And that's our hope.
That's my hope.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely my hope. I got to mention this. You see, Miriam, I'd also like to hear Dave teach. I know it's in him in a message we need to hear. Go
There
for
you
it,
go.
Dave.
That'll be
Go for
better
it,
on
Dave.
getting me to dance.
Are you saying we have more of a chance of getting you to dance, which is...
Oh, so you
can't
guys
get
are
him
picking
to
up line
dance.
dancing together?
Oh, I wish.
There is a video posted on the internet
yes.
somewhere of me dancing. I just can't remember.
It was.
goodness.
It was at Rosedown, and they were having the reenactment.
fun.
Of
Yes.
that.
Yes,
And they
yes.
got him in the ladies with the big hoop skirts and everything dancing in the.
Yeah, that's us.
He was
Yeah.
doing
I don't
those.
know if it was
He was doing those. What do they call it? Vintage dances.
Oh,
I
awesome.
don't know.
Awesome.
Let's see. You started out talking this morning. It was pretty good about there's ways of a man. I can't even quote the scriptures. Basically saying we have a tendency as people to go our own ways, so to speak, or the ways of up. How do I word this? Being self-righteous. You kind of started out talking about that.
Well,
I forget the phrase you used. It was right on about. You know, forgive me on this one. The thought's been coming and going.
Okay.
The whole.
Right.
Why don't you
Right.
think about it for a second and
No, that's why I can't think of it because you keep changing the subject.
well,
Sorry, you keep.
you can't
Yeah.
just.
You got a one-track mind.
Okay, all right.
It is falling off.
well, so I I think that in our day and age, the phrase of self-righteousness has been overplayed. So
And
overplayed because, again,
Misunderstood. Yeah.
it's used as another argument for the you can't.
That's
Yes.
You know, if
Somebody
you,
else
exactly what
needs
I'm
to be
talking about.
righteous for you.
yeah, if you are righteous, if you try to live by that old law, you know, or if
Well, that was always confusing, Jodelle, because they're telling you on the one hand you can't do it, but look, here's this free gift. Somebody else will do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But then you still need to aim for it, try to do it, but
you can't do it, but you need.
But you need to keep.
So this is the parable, and I'll give it away. It's in one of my books, the forthcoming books.
What's right in their own eyes.
Yeah.
Is basically what I was getting at. There's a way that's right in their own eyes.
That's right.
And, you know, so I'm by myself sometimes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm just right there.
Right.
You know, everything's good.
Right.
Everything's right. But is that wrong?
Okay,
You know,
so that's a good
you know,
question. All right, we'll come back to the parable in a minute. That's a really good question. And I think there is definitely a balance because, okay, so when you feel like you're seeking God, you feel like you have truth, you're living a righteous life.
And you're by yourself with your own
You're
thoughts.
by yourself.
Yeah.
You're living your own life. You and God are good.
There's nobody around.
Your basic question is that enough?
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good kicker you throw in there. Is that enough? No,
Right. So,
it's not.
well,
I think I
I-
know what you're talking about there, but I'm thinking more. Well, we got to teach also. We got to be
Well,
on the
and-
mountain
but-
by ourselves also.
but you are teaching. I mean, by setting up the video, by enabling us being here today, that is your contribution to teaching. You may not feel led to, be
No, no, no.
behind anything, but you're making it happen. So you are teaching.
You're part of the teaching.
You're part of it. But I think that if Israel is called to be a light to the nations, then as we grow confident in our understanding of the word, and if you don't know, ask someone. There's lots of people to ask. There's lots of good books to read.
So when you're by yourself and you feel like things are going good, and everything's good between you and God, so to speak, and then at that point, is that enough? And my answer was no, because you got to actually take that thought and start teaching it.
Absolutely.
Sharing it
Yeah,
is a better way of saying it.
If that gift stops with you, what good has it done?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But on the same aspect, I'm having a conversation with somebody, another Torah believer. We're having a dialogue or a discussion or something, and there's obviously a conflict going on there. Which one's right? Because we're
Right.
both right in our own eyes.
right.
And so,
Well,
I know that's the art of dialogue. I
It
know
is.
where I'm going with this, but
it is. Well, so much of I find that when you stick with the Torah itself, there's very little conflict. Now there could be issues of judgment
Right.
where there could be a conflict of interest, and then it would be, and this is where I love the study of constitutional law, because you have different categories of law. You have statutes, you have judgments, you have commandments, and each of those has a hierarchy of authority in regards to a law, so that a statute trumps an ordinance, but then a commandment trumps a statute. So that if you're in a court of law and a particular case contradicts something in some way, you know how to apply those laws to that partier case.
you got to verbalize it. You got to be able to
Exactly.
You got to be able to get that point across.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's something that
I just find it, it's I've always taken that verse, the righteousness in a man's own eyes, basically, is what it's saying. And it might not necessarily be so. You can be fooled.
Right.
A person can
Well,
be fooled.
there's something though.
I can fool myself, in other words.
Self-righteousness, though, I think has quantifiable attributes. I call it the Sneetches on the Beaches complex. So, you guys, if you go to YouTube, just Google Dr. Seuss Niches on the Beaches. There is nothing better
I've heard of it.
that I think puts it into thing. It's this self-righteousness. It comes back to the tablets, the pagan tablets, the tablets of destiny, where I have it. It's for me. It's for me only. I'm gonna, my precious. I'm gonna.
Everybody was going to that.
Exactly. Where I'm gonna have it. It's gonna be for me. It's gonna make me
gotta
have
have
something
it.
everybody else doesn't have, and you can't have it. That's self-righteous.
Okay.
It's the exclusivity. I'm gonna be God's people. I have something you can never have what I have. This thing to separate, this thing to divide, and it sows discord, where that's a self righteousness that is not righteousness. It's actually a form of wickedness. So if you're righteous, those aren't going to be the heart. That's not the heart that you're going to have.
Yeah. So I guess the a good way of determining if you're doing a self diagnosis here, if you're out by yourself and you're doing that self thing, is your ability to share that knowledge or thoughts with other people. So don't even look, you messing with me already.
Well, I think everybody's ability to share is different.
Well,
Your
yeah,
ability to relate. Everybody has different talents and
It's
skills.
good because one of the things I like about Judaism, did I say it right, Judaism, is conflicting opinions. So much is not so much a fight.
Right.
It's
Dialogue.
It's a dialogue.
Discussion,
It's a
yeah.
discussion.
Or
right.
debate, yeah.
So if you're scared of, which I am sometimes, having a thought,
Conflict,
and I don't want to have a conflict with somebody, so I don't mention anything.
Wait, that's what I
Really
was laughing at Sam
Okay.
saying. I don't know if I can talk because I don't have that social filter. Sometimes I just say
I
things that
know.
comes out and I might
Yeah.
get blasted.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold back, man. I'm just,
I know, right?
yeah.
But
But it's a self-diagnosing thing. If you're just by yourself, you're never really going to get much accomplished. But if you start having dialogue with people and sharing your faith with people,
Well,
and so forth,
the whole
there's
paradigm.
opportunities to do self-adjustments there.
Exactly. Well, every time you share the love you have for Torah, you never know if that's going to inspire someone else. If you don't know what people are really struggling with on the inside, their hopes, their fears, whatever, depression, and sometimes you spark a light, and something just turns on, and you can't turn it off. And you never know. You may be one step in the process, and then they meet somebody else who might be able to articulate it better for them, because we each respond to different things. So
I
you never
believe
know.
that
So it's
too.
all, steps along a process. And it's an honor for each of us to be a part of whatever process that is. And we may never know. But I think what we do know and what we can see is, there's more righteous people here. There's more people that are returning to Yahweh. And that is inspiring.
and it's also, it rubs off
It does.
when you, like iron sharpening iron. It when you, and I talked about that last week about when Abraham separated from Lot. Lot's heart was like doing with Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the wickedness and everything. That's when God gave him the promise, the seed. It was after he separated himself from
Right.
that sinful element.
That's right.
So that's interesting. But I gotta say something about this tree. There's a conversation going on in the dialogue about the tree in the garden. Did it have seeds? And as a horticulturist, I have to point out. Okay, the debate is, how could a
Well,
tree?
you think there was actual tree?
How could a tree have? Well, no. I mean, if we're gonna say an actual tree, here's the
I didn't
thing.
miss it.
Yes, I do believe it had seeds, and it's not a tree of good with fruit that is good and evil. Two different
Right,
fruits.
right.
It's a tree of knowledge.
That's right.
And the fruit, it's like saying, I have this citrus tree that has sweet and sour fruit. It's a fruit that has sweet and sour. It's a knowledge that contains knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
The knowledge is the fruit, not the good and evil.
Right. Well, I guess the way I understood that is my children. If my children have always obeyed me, say they get up to the point where they're 4 years old, they've always done what I've said, and yet there is a toy that's up on the shelf, and I say, never play with this, don't touch it. They're not going to have any knowledge of disobedience. You know, if they are continually obeying me until they go reach for that toy one day and they disobey my word. It's at that point, it's in the action, the doing, the unrighteousness that they gain the knowledge. I guess that's the way I
I'm following
understood it.
that. It's like you have to. That's what happens with as a parent. I've seen it clearly. It's like the children get to a point where they have to experience life on their own. You can't do it for them as a parent. You can try. You can do your best, but
Doesn't work well.
sometimes you just gotta let them mess up. You know.
You do.
It's not like an aggressive you let them mess up. It's a passive let them mess up. They're going to mess up. Let's
Right.
just pray that they don't mess up bad.
Well,
Let them let them ease into this idea, because we as adults do that all the time. I mess up. We
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Sherry
mess
can't
up.
even stop at a stop sign sometimes.
Oh, no. Oh,
Let's not go there
Sherry.
with, what was I doing, God? What? How did I sin? What?
I know.
Is this a
I'm just
consequence?
saying, I'm just saying,
It's no, it was a beautiful azalea bush, right? Wanting to be back in
No,
the
I
garden.
was in the wrong, and I just didn't look good enough.
no, we all mess up.
We
mess up.
all do. Oh, geez.
I'll tell you what, I was sick about it. I thought Miriam had asked about the book that I referred to that
Yes.
Vicky was talking about. I thought I did post it. I'm sorry. It's the
So
Bedside Torah, Wisdom, Visions, and Dreams by Bradley Artson. And I don't know why it didn't show up. I did
Well, you're
try to post
posting
it.
that. So
I did
as a
try to post
parent,
it.
you know, we let our kids mess up, like or I already explained that. So, but at the same time, we still forgive them and love them as a parent, and I think that's kind of the way the Torah is designed. This whole walk here, we do mess up as adults. We do make mistakes, and we can
See, okay.
we can go, yeah, sure.
Okay, so
Go-
you're
jump in.
touching on a great point, because we do that. But even though we do all those things, God still counts us for righteousness as long as we keep trying to walk along that
right.
path and doing what is right. It isn't until we give up and we forsake the trying and we just kind of throw our hands up and say, oh, you know,
And
to
that
hell
was-
with it,
I mean,
that...
we've all had children. At least I can't really say that's too broad. There
Right.
are children, and I've had one or two that just gave up and continued on doing wrong, going down the wrong
Right.
path.
Right.
At some point, you know, as a parent, you never stop loving them. You really don't.
No,
You
no.
know, you
Your
get
your
to a
heart
point-
breaks for
yeah.
them because you want you want something that's better for them, for their sake. But you also want to pass this gift down, and you want to see this gift continuing to grow, because you want it to grow in momentum. You the hope is that the next generation will be more righteous than our generation, so that there's less poverty, there's less wars, there's less disease, less heartache. You want that righteousness to grow and to explode and to mushroom rather than contract.
That's right.
So yeah, you have that hope.
Yeah, that hope. And as adults, I conceivably could say I could get to a point where I'm just make the wrong decisions on purpose and deny God and go on about it. And at that point, I really don't know if I could get to a point where God doesn't love me anymore. But having studied the Torah a little bit, I think you can get to that point.
Oh yeah.
You know, you
Yeah,
can
if
just
you're
get,
hard,
you know,
it's hard.
and I
and-
know, well, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see that yeah, when a person does make the choice to
As long as you
for
have
wicked.
breath, you know,
Right.
you can always turn. You can always start
Right.
making that turn. I'm
You
not going
can.
to deny that at all.
Right.
But I
Right.
just,
You
know.
can turn, but it comes down to, you know.
So it does come down to God gave us a gift of free choice. We really do have the freedom to choose.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, that's one of the
Strictly out
discussions
there.
that here. Yeah, from a Tanakh perspective, that's
Sure.
I think reiterated over and over again is choose you this day whom you will serve. You know, that's Joshua
Yeah.
24:14. You know, choose you this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve Jehovah.
And,
So-
and like I say, it's not like it's a free. Everything's free. That use of that word. That's an English, Western view of things. When we say the word free, it means different things.
Right.
This choice we have the ability to choose it.
Well, we have an ability to direct our own destiny. We have an
To a point,
ability.
yes, yeah.
Right. So what you
In other
find
words,
in
consequences.
right, what you find in Leviticus 27 and Deuteronomy 28 is a paradigm where God says, if you make this choice
Right.
and embrace evil to depart from my covenant, then this will be your consequence. So these are like limiting factors. God says, I will limit and I will stand against to be an adversary to your sins, but through these judgments. But if we make those choices to go down that particular road, I mean, we can choose to follow him. We can
And
choose to
I'm
rebel against
talking-
him.
I'm really talking more on a micro level. In other words, just
Mm-hmm.
small choices. Whether I leave this laptop here and turn it on, or you know, we have choices to make in life. It's not everything. Everything is not so much written down in stone that we have to worry about or concern ourselves about all these little choices and everything.
Well, this is an interesting concept. I don't know about you guys,
Right.
but growing up, I was taught that every day you got to wake up every morning and seek the will of God.
Right.
What is the will of God
Perfect
in your
will.
life?
The
Perfect will of God. What does He want me to do today? And
Yep.
as I studied Torah, I found the exact opposite, the reverse, where God's given us a path to live by. He's made it very clear what we should do. You know, it's up to us whether or not we decide to do it or not.
Sure. But
But
every day you wake up.
well, the opposite paradigm that you find in Psalms is you commit your way, what you want, to me, and I will bring it to pass.
That's right.
So,
So in
it
other words,
totally
the day you wake up
reverses.
and you're excited to see what God's
Yeah.
doing that day.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
you're
that's
excited.
what-
It's like,
yeah.
well, what do I want to do today?
You
know, I'm gonna live
it's
life
basically
within-
an autopilot thing,
Yeah,
really.
it
at that
is.
point,
It
yeah.
is. I'm going to live life within these
It's
parameters,
such a
within
freedom.
the
It's such a
Torah.
freedom. I
It
know
is
exactly what
complete
you're talking
freedom.
about there, as far as the stress involved about whether you're in the perfect will of God, and so on and so forth. And, you know, I've forgotten all that stuff. You know, it's clearly
Right.
cleared it out when I started thinking. And I think that's what happened. You know, I studied how to get out of this Western thought frame, Western idea of thinking. A friend of mine hit me on that pretty hard a long time ago.
Right.
He said, you don't have the worldview. You know, you got to have a
Right.
better worldview. So it got me a little confused. Because I basically forsook all that Western idea of things and tried to go into a different
Right.
area of thought there. I'm not sure it's a place I belong.
I think we're just always.
don't know.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're
straight
just
out, you know.
always seeking. It's
No,
a life's a journey, and
Yeah.
the journey can be enjoyed.
Sure,
But
sure.
you know, I think too for us today, God's judgments hold true of society. There comes a tipping point in the degradation of a land, and it's always a particular land.
Yep,
And
dirt,
God's
actual
judgment
dirt.
comes. So
Actual
I think
place.
that even today, their judgment is coming. So unless we can spark this fire of righteousness and somehow motivate people to where they desire it too, and they start doing
Get
it.
some tracks printed up. I'll go stand.
I
on the
know,
street,
go
man.
stand on the street
I
corner.
get on the street corner, dude.
Yeah. Well, and so much of it is God
I
is
might
doing
have
the drawing.
flashbacks, but I'll do it.
Yeah, he's drawing us together. He's drawing us out. I mean, we're finding each other. The internet is such an incredible device
Isn't it amazing?
to bring us together, to allow us to have some sort of fellowship, so we're not all alone. And I think that's going to
That's right.
continue to
Now
grow.
we got to get off this at some point. This
Yep.
could be going for all
We
day.
could, we could. Yep,
We could
I'm
do- Maybe
ready
that's
to
what
call
we
it
need
a
to
day.
do. Just like,
24. Oh no, I'll be at the Torah reading team. They can have the 24-hour reading. So
think about after 30 hours, we'd be like, no, that's not what I said.
I know we'd have some coffee. You'd have some beer. We'd be doing good.
We'll be in trouble. We'll be
So,
in
well,
trouble.
thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for sharing your Shabbat with us.
Yes.
I hope you'll go enjoy your family or go read a good book and have a wonderful, blessed rest of the day in Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, y'all.
I'm gonna hit the mute button right now.